Hi, guys and ladies, welcome back to another episode. My name is Disema Matiati, and you are welcome to episode number 16 of the Being an Analyst podcast. In this episode, we're going to be talking about thriving in the digital age. We are looking at how can we empower SMMEs, small to medium micro enterprises, in the fourth industrial revolution. How can we empower SMMEs in the fourth industrial revolution? That's what we're discussing after the theme song. Stay tuned. Just to start off, I would like to recognize that most of our small SMME, small, micro, medium enterprises are not just sitting doing nothing. They're actually taking initiatives to make sure that they put their products out there, they put their services out there, and they get everything else going on, in whatever they're doing. And they're making sure that everybody gets to know about what they're doing. I recently saw the last live stream of Township Entrepreneur Association or Alliance. They call it T. What they do is quite amazing. They pull together entrepreneurs from a certain township, they put them in one room or in one venue. What they do is they can take up to 20 entrepreneurs or however are available, and they can pitch their product. That's a beautiful environment to say, listen, my name is December, I sell this service, I sew dresses, and I make beautiful evening gowns or something like that. If you want to find me, you can find me on these platforms. We take cuts or whatever the case is, but they pitch the need of their service, as well as letting people know about it. And as I said there, and I said a private message to also the owner Bulelani, and I said to him, it's quite amazing how some of this innovation is not taking advantage of the technologies that we already have in a 4IR. The simplest one is most of these township businesses that go to pitch do not have e-commerce systems ready to go. I mean, that's just simple. It's like leaving money on the table, like they say in investment banking. If you don't have a checkout, a proper e-commerce checkout system, you are just leaving money on the table because you want me to drive from wherever, drive 100 kilometers to come to your place and then transact in a normal exchanging money. In that case, if it's not going to work out, really, we're really going to be falling behind on the SMME space. Also, contrary to that, I mean, one of the big corporate investment banks wrote that they think that the e-commerce business is going to be growing to 225 billion rands by 2025. 225 billion rands excludes small to medium enterprises that don't have an e-commerce checkout. So as much as we have SMMEs rallying, doing whatever they have to do, we are all going to be missing out on the billions of rands that they should have tapped into because they don't have an e-commerce checkout. So this actually forces us as analysts to think twice about how we're going to be providing services for small businesses, whether it's just you giving me data and I have to look at the data and I have to give you recommendation or insights based on data. If I don't have this at the back of my mind, that the e-commerce marketplace is actually going to double in a few years. Well, it's already next year. Next year, it will equate to 225 billion. Now, you ask yourself to say, how much of that will be a share for small, micro, medium enterprises, especially those coming through from um, disadvantaged areas like the peri-urban or the rural areas, then you're really going to get your eyes popping. Try to answer this question to give out a high level, and get you going and give you the information so that when you do this recommendation, you can really, really go out there as a pro expert analyst. I'm going to be splitting this podcast conversation into 5 segments. The first segment, we're going to be talking about the need for infrastructure integration. That's the first segment. The second segment, we're going to be talking about legislation alignment, and we'll be touching on Airbnb and Uber. You still remember when they first launched in South Africa? What happened in those times? The revolts were there. That's why the legislation alignment is quite important. The third segment that we're going to be talking about is the global business adaptation. Global business adaptation is quite important when what you are servicing or what you're solving for crosses borders. So as long as what you're saving for, I mean, you're saving me a burger, or you're saving me a quota or some chips and bread, and it's all localized, it's all okay. But as soon as you are saying, hang on a second, I actually sell detergents, but my market is in Botswana, or my market is in Kenya, or my market is in Zimbabwe, my market is in Namibia, and not South Africa, or not local, we're crossing borders. This is where global business adaptation has to actually come into the forefront. The fourth segment that we're going to be looking at is going to be government and business collaboration. And the last segment that we're going to be talking about is more like a recommendation conclusion, where we're talking about the agency in action. We're going to be emphasizing to say what we should have done it yesterday and not today. Okay, without further ado, let's start with infrastructure integration. So with infrastructure integration, we're going to delve into the critical role of infrastructure in empowering SMMEs during their fourth industrial revolution. Remember, SMMEs are just not going to take themselves there. They need proper infrastructure to get there and get things done. We're looking at the comprehensive infrastructure networks. When I say networks, please don't just think about communication networks, because for SMMEs to thrive, there is a need to have a connected environment. As analysts, we need to emphasize the importance of a comprehensive infrastructure network, where it's covering energy, it's covering water, it's covering health, and it's covering education. When you're talking about the network, we're talking about our energy side should be solved. I know right now we're still experiencing load shedding, so we know the impact that load shedding has on small businesses is quite detrimental. The water side, with a lot of water shedding in some areas, we know the impact that it's having on hospitality areas. You know, people will be canceling your holiday because you're hearing that. I mean, probably in some other province there's some problems with water and sanitation. Health issues, you don't want to be moving over to a province or to an area where there's some outbreak of some other disease, bed flu, mad cow disease, whatever the case is. And education are quite critical. When there's a proper network of those, energy, water, health, and education, we now have a building block where SMMEs could be able to thrive. Think about yourself. You're selling small things, you're selling quarters. You need proper water, sanitation. You need energy going so that your stove can go on. You need proper health um, things along your way. When somebody else get bent, you need to be able to pick up the phone, and ambulance is there when they're getting bent by the hot stove. All of those things, you need the network going. And another thing that you need is the government collaboration. We need to explore ways on how we can collaborate, or we can create or push for collaboration between government and business to actually expedite the development of urgently needed 4IR infrastructure. We need the 4IR infrastructure. We need that fast internet. We need that connected PC. We need to connect to government services so that we can also offer some services. So, for instance, you need to verify if you are a funeral parlor, you need to verify that somebody really did pass away. You need to connect to the government system so that your system can say, yes, this person's death certificate has been issued. All of that needs this much needed, urgently needed, I must add, for IR infrastructure. We need to learn how businesses can actively engage in projects for testing and scaling. And probably government will be opening up these things for us to be doing that. And while we at this, let's not forget the labor unions, because the labor unions also has got a huge part to play. Because as you are a small business owner, your members of your, especially for medium-sized enterprises, your members might be part of the union. So whatever you try to do, whether you're trying to cut a person from going to the department to verify if a person has died, you're now introducing a nice system that's going to be sending death certificate straight to your doorstep or straight to your computer. All of that you need to consult with labor unions, and you need to discover, and we need to emphasize the role that labor unions are playing in facilitating the negotiation and overcoming the deadlocks, ensuring that the timely rollout of 4IR projects is experienced. If the labor unions are not happy, our innovation or our recommendation, even if you are the best analyst in the world, will be delayed in some way. If we go back to if we jump straight ahead to the second segment where we're talking about legislation alignment, we need to tackle the essential need for legislation to align with the fast-paced changes brought by the fourth IR. Why we're talking about this is currently we don't have a legal framework that actually adapted the 4IR. We need to understand why the legal frameworks needs to evolve, and we need to help everybody else understand why the legal framework needs to evolve to foster growth and regulatory compliance for SMMEs in the 4IR. You can talk about a lot of things. You can talk about tax, you can talk about intellectual property, you can talk about all of anything else within the legal framework. And also another thing that you can talk about is you can even talk about the Africa Intercontinental Free Trade Agreements. You say, yes, we have the free trade agreement, but I cannot, because of legal issues, uh, the border cannot let me send things through, even though we have this uh, Africa Free Trade Agreement that is in place, because the legal framework hasn't adapted to create opportunities for small businesses, so that whatever we're giving out as analysts to say, maybe you can try this, it will be null and void by the time that we put it there. Another thing that we have to look at when we're talking about legislation adaptation is actually in Parliament. We need to explore the necessities for parliamentary action, making members of parliament in the cabinet to be 4IR and science literate for effective legislation. We're not sending them to go do bachelors of science. We just want them to understand how things work within the 4IR, so that when it comes to creating drafts for legislation, they can work a bit of a better pace compared to how things are going currently with a slower pace. Maybe when the government, when the people in parliament are really understand the impact of 4IR, they can actually run through in a much faster pace. Other point, when we're talking about a faster pace, it's intellectual property and tax laws, especially when we're coming into the side of 4IR. When we start to digitalize things, yes, we've heard about Airbnb, we heard about Uber, we heard about the career lines that were between the tax laws and intellectual property. We have to actually go in and delve into the importance of reviewing intellectual property rights and tax laws. We have to go into that and then review it. And then after that, we have to give recommendation. This is where the tax laws are linking hand in hand with the parliament that's competent somehow with 4IR or with science, because they would now understand when we're saying, okay, hang on a second, let's look at intellectual property rights and let's look at the tax laws, making sure that companies like Airbnb, we've learned from them, and Uber, we are well covered, because our own SMMEs might be coming up with something quite beautiful. As analysts, we might research everything else, give them the right tools, and off they go. They implement, it goes for development. Beautiful business analysts worked on it, process engineers worked on it, developers developed the solution, and they are off, not just for testing, they're going live. And then you might find out that the laws are the ones that's going to take this beautiful innovation and trash it on the floor. Let's jump straight to the third segment where we're talking about global business adaptation, which is quite linked to what we just spoke about. This segment will shed the light on the global nature of our business and how SMMEs can adapt in a global landscape, because When you go into 4IR, you need to know that you're no longer local. So for us to shed the light on you, let's remind you of the Airbnb story. Let's just make a hypothetical story here. Let's say I have extra family members coming through by my side, and I go into Airbnb and I find out that, oh, in the same estate that I stay in, there's actually a free house. I click a room and then I can send my neighbors there. It turns out that it's your house and you are actually my neighbor. Even though I requested the service in South Africa and you delivered the service in South Africa, but because we involved Airbnb, we now move from South African laws to American laws. And if I'm unhappy with your service or there's other some cribs between us, our business is not just local that we can go to the local court. It also now involves all the other tax laws or whatever the case is, all the other laws that are even coming from different countries. In this case, will be coming from the USA or wherever the Airbnb head offices are. So in that case, when we're looking at that, then we're like, hang on a second, we actually need to come up with proper frameworks. If we're going to be implementing technologies for small businesses, if we're digitalizing them to have their technologies being implemented, how's it going to look like when we're talking about intercontinental free trade? When we are offering a service right here in South Africa to somebody else who's in Zimbabwe or somebody else who's in Nigeria, how's it going to look like? In fact, we are moving between SADC and the East African, community. We are on different side, East African, West African community from the SADC community. We are on different communities altogether. But now we are transacting. How will it look like? This is where global business adaptation is also quite needed, and it makes it a little bit more complicated. And probably that's why most people will say, hey, I'd rather stay local. But when you stay local, we've known what happened with Airbnb, that it has taken a lot of businesses out of business. And we know what happened to Uber, that a lot of taxis that should have been taking up people that are, paying quite well, they're struggling because almost everybody else is jumping into the Uber app and they're no longer requesting the traditional taxi. If you're thinking that you're going to stay small, your small business is going to stay small, you are opening up yourself to all these other people that are coming through. So as much as I might be coming through or other analysts might be coming through to say, hang on a second, can we look at all of this? You have to be open-minded as a small business owner. And as analysts, before we even give out the recommendation, we have to write either to government, labor unions, or whatever to say, hang on a second, give us some breathing space so that we can implement whatever we want to implement. The fourth segment that we're going to jump into has to do with government and business collaboration. Government cannot operate alone, business cannot operate alone, and here we need to actually put them together. And in this segment, that's why we want to focus on the crucial collaboration between government, business, and the labor unions for the success of the 4IR for small business or 4IR initiatives. Why? Because we want to look at number one, which is the active engagement. If we don't have the active engagement, we're going to have a huge problem, because we need active engagement between business and government in order to drive innovation, of which is what we're trying to push for. If we do innovation, it will create job creation and it will improve essential services. So business, as we are sitting down, a small business or whatever size that you are in, medium-sized business, even micro businesses, we need active engagement between you, the small business owner or micro business owner or medium-sized business owner, you as business, and the government, so that we can drive innovation, we can drive job creation, and we can improve the essential services. For instance, if I'm giving out services that I'm going to be cleaning the street, this normal street in whatever suburb that we're staying in or township that we're staying in, and I'm a micro business, I'm just one man. I got a buggy and I put on the side the handyman. If I'm offering all that services, I mustn't be clashing with the services that the government is doing, because the municipality will come back and smack me in the head to say, no, you're not supposed to do that. I'm bringing this up because we've seen on the news how it was ruled that during when there's power outages, we know that people that normally stay by the side of the road, whether dancing or asking for change, when it's power outages, they normally jump into the traffic intersection and they help move traffic accordingly, and they coordinated quite well. But we knew that the Metro Police came over and they said, if there is an accident that takes place there, that person, that good Samaritan who tried to do the traffic, will be held responsible for causing the accident. So now we have a huge issue here. We have somebody else who's willing to offer the service, and we have a willing buyer, which will be me, because I want to get out of the traffic light as soon as possible. But the problem is there's no active government and business, or whatever, the micro business owner engagement. If there's an accident, government will come and prosecute this service provider. They're not going to say, hang on a second, we know about you. So if we go back to our thing, uh, business and government needs to have active collaboration so that it can create what innovation. Imagine if we create an app that they can enroll on to say, no, I want to be in this corner of this intersection, and we say for 1,000 rand an hour you can be there. We've already enrolled job creation, and by doing that we are improving essential services, so we don't have to have all the traffic officers in one intersection. We already just let people become innovative in their own way. So we need that active engagement, but not forgetting labor unions, because labor unions facilitation is also needed. We know that if they're not part of the negotiation, they can, on part of the table where the negotiation is taking place, they can actually you know actually derail everything else. So we need them to help us overcome the potential deadlocks and ensuring timely project rollouts. If you really, really want that, make sure that the labor unions are already there. Even if you're trying to come up with a big innovation, you are a funeral parlor, you need to connect with government to see if somebody's death certificate is ready so that you can do your processes. And then you do your connection to say, hey, if one guy keeps on going to the department to find out if the death certificate is there, it's costing me 2 or 3 days. You implement the system because you met with the beautiful analyst who taught you through a new process for you, and you say, this is a beautiful process. I'm going to use the API to connect and get my death certificate. Before you know it, the labor unions or the labor people are coming over to say, hang on a second, why you make him our person obsolete? Because now they're just sitting there. Their job was to get death certificate from the department. Now you took all of that away from him. So you must always make sure that whenever we want to implement something, remind us to include the government and the labor unions. Because as a middle-sized business, you will be experiencing people that have joined labor unions. So yeah, that'll be that. The fifth and the final segment, let's just look at the agency in action. So I know we should have started yesterday, but we let us just conclude by emphasizing the agency in aligning infrastructure and legislation with 4IR development for the benefit of SMMEs. 4IR development, for my side, as far as I'm concerned, if they are not for the benefit of SMMEs, we are not also hitting the target, the mark that we want to do. I've read that we are expecting 4IR to be worth 225 billion by 2025. 225 billion by 2025 is 2024. 2025 is next year. But if most of our SMMEs are not taking advantage of having an e-commerce checkout in their website or wherever their service provider is, they are not going to be part of the 225 billion market that is estimated next year. So it means only the large companies are going to be taking advantage of that, and the customers will be flogging on that side. So for small, medium, micro enterprises to really, really take advantage of that, we really, really need them as far as yesterday to actually go in, fight for the alignment of infrastructure, legislation, so that 4IR could actually be for small business advantage. Economic benefit and job creation, as much as we can do that as small business SMMEs, we need to highlight the potential economic benefit, job creation, and enhanced services delivery that actually can come if we get infrastructure and legislation on our side as small business or analysts that are trying to push for small business digitalization or something like that. And we need to do this as soon as possible because we need to create a thriving 4IR ecosystem as soon as possible. If we go back to the 225 market share price or the market value that this CIB bank was a corporate investment bank was projecting. If we say we want a share of that to go to small businesses, and we don't have the e-commerce checkouts, I mean, we're really not going to be able to sustain job creation. We're really going to struggle a lot. And that's why, as us as analysts, I think we need to do a lot of work into just not just speaking with government, not just speaking with labor unions, but actually speaking with small business owners to teach them and share our insights on what does it look like for you to take advantage of 4IR. If we can do that, then our job is done. Our work is done. The only thing else that will be left is not the analysis of talking, but it will be the analysis of implementation. We'll be going out there, rolling out as much as possible, as much SMMEs as possible into this thriving 4IR ecosystem. So that's our episode 16. Please stay tuned for episode number 17. Thank you for tuning in. Cheers.